So I thought I would do a video here, um, kind of just talking through my mood swing, because the past week and a half or so, I thought I was doing better, and then all of a sudden, even while I'm, you know, intoxicated or high, I all of a sudden just fell down. I felt the depressive spiral hit. And it's gotten to a point where I know when it's hitting. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. You just feel something coming on. Like, you're not thinking about anything in particular. Like, you don't have a solid thought, but you have like the remnants of a thought in the background of your mind. So you're not quite thinking of something clearly, but you know something's there that's going to trigger your spiral. That's kind of what it feels like. It's almost like you sense someone, like, when someone's watching you from behind and you get that sensation and you turn around. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that sensation. I'm sorry, I'm chewing gum. Trying to stimulate the brain a bit more, at least get it to relax. But I also did take my evening edible, but I don't think it's fully hit yet. The reason why I say I don't think is I don't know if my tolerance is built up to an extent to where it's no longer as potent. So then, therefore it's not going to hit me as hard. But so far it's been pretty consistent, so I don't expect a change. But yeah, I think what kind of just kicked off the depressive spirals actually was a dream that I had for some reason of my ex, basically fiancée. Her and I broke up in 2024, and for some reason I had a dream that I texted her for whatever reason, asking how she's doing. So I don't know why I had that dream, and granted, I didn't need images of her in my mind, like in the dream itself, but that was kind of like just a little slap as well, add insult to injury. So, someone, who follows me on Threads astutely put it that it may just be the fact that I went to a couple weddings, and that was something that was going to potentially be in my future, which it no longer is. And maybe that's what kind of triggered it. It was just like maybe my subconscious absorbed all of that and put the pieces together into this dream that would plague me. Basically a week after, I went to one of the weddings. So, but yeah, then it just got me thinking about the things I could have been, and just how agitated, angry about it, just all the feelings. And also, sorry, the edible actually has hit, so bear with me. But I just feel hopeless. I think that's the best feeling that I can put it, or the best that I can put it. Sorry, it's not the best feeling. I think that's the best way of putting it, is I feel hopeless. Like, my future is just, me doomed to live with my mother for basically until she passes away. And then me struggling to figure out how to make ends meet, potentially on my own, while having to figure out, what to do with my younger brother, who is on the spectrum, but he is special needs. He'll need a caretaker. And granted, I know my mother said not to worry about it, but it's just something that still sits on my mind. It's something that is heavy on my mind. So it's not like I can let that go, even though it's technically not my responsibility. And I think this little behavior, this little thought process applies to everyone as well. Maybe this is why, people think that I'm very nice and kind. at least at first, until you kind of realize that I'm very cold and calculating on the inside. As in, I can brush aside pretty much any emotion that I want, save for anger. Anger has been the one that has always won over everything else. Like, my analytical mind is able to, like, put a pause on all the other emotions, but that. And also the depressive spiral. But that does involve anger sometimes as well. But I think the anger issues also stem from the fact that I had a hard time socializing when I was a child. I actually went to therapy for that. I just don't remember the exact years I went to therapy, because, I mean, Christ, that was so long ago. I think I had therapy when I was I think it was before the 4th grade. It was sometime like in the 1st through 3rd grade. That was when I went to therapy. Over time, my social skills have improved, but, I'm still not very adept when it comes to social settings. At least I don't feel, but then again, a lot of people beg to differ. Sure, I'm quiet, but when when I get going, as far as conversation goes, I can continue the conversation all night if I so desire. But, and I think just overall I felt angry because I was ostracized for being different as a kid, My parents, all my relatives, every one of them said that I was a very intelligent kid. Despite my grades not being great initially in school, mostly because if the way I think now is at least somewhat similar to the way I thought when I was a child, I don't like being told a piece of information without being given a proof. Or I don't like information that's given to me in such a way that I can't break it down readily. And therefore, whatever you're telling me is going to be null and void, because I have to now think and ignore whatever else you're saying to figure out what this piece of information means. That's what goes on in the background. So, I remember as a child, it was so fucking weird. I couldn't multiply or divide. I could add and subtract, but I could not work with numbers when it came to multiplication and division. Mostly because I didn't understand why we did the method that we did. What was the explanation? And I asked my now late stepfather this question, and he basically answered it in like 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes I basically was able to catch up on basically all the math that I needed to do. Because I understood everything else up to that point, except that critical piece of information, so I really wasn't good at math up until that point, because a lot of it revolved around those operations. But I quickly caught up, mostly because someone finally understood what I was asking. But my late father was very controlling. I felt like I could never get angry around him, because he was also a very aggressive person. And so, I kept it bottled in for so long, But, I'm doing better as far as the anger goes. It's just I still get irritable. And it was just this past week and a half, I felt depressed and just irritable. But as soon as I'm on my, my daytime edible, which is sativa, or I'm on like a microdose of shrooms, all of a sudden I'm put at ease. But the instant I realize I'm off of it, I get not aggressive immediately, but I notice something's off. And I haven't done enough research or information on this. I don't know if psychedelics can be addicting, because it's just nice to be calm and mellow. And I have not figured out that off switch for my anger yet. Like, I'm realizing what does help is me not watching the news. The less news I watch, the better I feel, just the less Just as long as the bad news is kept to a minimum, I can handle it. Like maybe one piece of bad news a day, 2 or 3 tops, like 3 tops. After that, no more, because you're going to overwhelm me. And these 3 things could be small, or just nothing more than one major thing, because that would definitely be more than I can handle. But I'd have to figure it out at that moment in time. But it's just, it sucks because, I keep thinking that I'm finding ways to get better, and all of a sudden the depressive spiral hits, and, I'm back down to feeling like shit, having my suicidal ideations, just feeling isolated and alone because, when I'm in these spirals, I look at one little situation, one little piece of information at a time. Like, for instance, there was a time where I went to get pizza for dinner, and I saw an elderly woman working the cash register, and I just immediately thought to myself, Jesus Christ, what got you in this position in life? And it's because of a fucking shitty economy that basically used you, maybe strung you along with some good jobs and some pensions, and as soon as you got to retirement age, they just decided to lay you off, cut off your retirement funds and everything. Or, maybe you had your money in 401k and you went through a bunch of different, boom and bust cycles, and, you just happen to get unfortunate and lose a job, and then you're in a bust cycle, and now you're just having to work like any job you can get, because, Social Security doesn't cut it, and, now your 401k is pretty much trashed, or your pension is pretty much given up, because your employer let you go. Or maybe you do have the pension, but, you have to haggle over it. I don't know how that goes, but, you find yourself in a position where you did everything right, and yet here you are working at, the age of 70, and that just pissed me off. I feel bad for that lady. I don't know her situation, but that's kind of like the chain of thought that goes on in my head. All those little things that could have gone wrong, and through no fault of her own, and she was put in that position. Just those little things, little tiny details. I have to start going down just analyzing every little bit, and that's what drives it. For context, I have, a background in physics and astronomy and math, so I'm definitely more of an analytical as well as critical thinker, but, it's just, I can never stop trying to pick things apart, and I think that's just what's really killing me. Because the more I dive into something, the more I see the truth in something, even if the truth is awful or and enlightening, it does me no good. Because, what can I even do with that information? I'm a little more, I guess I'm a little wiser to everything that's going on now. I would definitely say there's a drastic difference between 22-year-old me and 32-year-old me now, But, and then this week, today, I was told that my grandmother had fallen down and broke her hip, and she's in the hospital. This is the second time this year she's been to the hospital, and she's 80. Her 81st birthday is actually coming up soon. And I'm just sitting here worrying, we'll at least get to see her one more time before she passes. Granted, I don't think she's at that stage, because, yeah, sure, 2 times in 1 year. One's an accident, one was, I think, like a small heart attack. I can't recall. Mostly because I don't want to think about those events. But, actually, I don't even know what the first event was. I need to go back and look. But But either way, she's still with us. But I worry if I'll be able to actually plan a road trip at some point to go out there, to California and see her, at least before, before she passes. Granted, I still think she has a lot of time, but, you never know. And I've been away from home for 17 years now. I visited a couple times here and there, but it's just not the same. I feel more complete when I'm there. I feel kind of at ease. I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, even if I'm not like with my family, if I am just in, the state or in my hometown, it just feels calming. But, I really hope that, there's no more surprises. I do want to try and take a road trip, maybe, in the summer of next year or something. Go back to Washington, drinking all the sights. Plan to at least build up some PTO for that. But, I'm just hoping that, I'm hoping that I'm right and she sticks around for a while longer. Long enough for me to maybe figure out a way to just move back home for a while. Be with most of my family. Sure, I'd be leaving my mother and brother behind, but they've also made it clear that, they're not going to go back home. They're going to find a home somewhere else, and that's fine. And I need to do the same as well. But, a stepping stone would be to go back home and just find my peace. And maybe then, if things look up, if I find work, where I want to live, maybe travel and live along the Oregon or Washington coast. What type of employment I could find up there, I don't know, besides, a couple of the obvious, like lumber or fishing, which I wouldn't be opposed to doing. It's just, maybe fishing, mostly because I just have a fear of open water. But, lumber, that's something that I feel like I could do. And I wouldn't complain about doing that. Hell, I get my workout in each day, pretty much. I wouldn't really need a gym membership. I'd still have the gym membership, but, gives me an excuse to eat more, too, I suppose. But, yeah, it's just, I don't know, my mood's been, up and down. It's just, it hasn't been a steady dip. It hasn't been a steady rise. It's just been oscillating, ever so slightly about a state of, peace. And I'm just hoping, this depressive spiral ends soon and I can just feel at least a little normal again. But yeah, I just wanted to, talk about that. Just try as I might, can't seem to silence every aspect of me, and it just sucks. I just so desperately want to stop thinking about everything and just have, just calm. But then again, my mind is very fickle. But yeah, it's, I don't know if the spirals, the depressive spirals just become shorter or the frequency just increases, decreases. Instead of getting a depressive spiral every maybe week or few weeks, it becomes once every few months, maybe once every few years for those that are lucky. But I don't make this video to complain or anything. I just want to talk about things because, I don't know, I feel like it's better to get it out there. Granted, I don't have health insurance, and I definitely am not feeding this shitty system by purchasing health insurance. I figure if I just get a grip on my diet and just keep weightlifting, then I'll be fine, at least for a while. But yeah. Sorry, I don't want to say anything depressing, but like, fuckers, I'm just thinking about like getting older and getting sick now of all fucking times. Like, they just want us to die young. That's really it. There's no other fucking excuse for what's going on here in our country right now, and for all I know, worldwide. Greedy sacks of shit. Wasn't enough, was it? I had to keep taking more and more. I'm sorry. But anyway, I know I said I shouldn't say anything more depressing, but you know. But anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. And just, you know, now I have this on my mind, and I'm just hoping, you know, that things go smoothly, at least until I can go back out there definitively and see my grandmother, you know, like on a little vacation. So, but anyway, bye for now.